back to the third and final part of our interview with Jenna Lewinski. This is Rabbi Roger coming to you from Israel, and that was Jenna blowing the shofar that was made from one of her Jacob's sheep. In our previous broadcast, Jenna and her husband were desiring to bring the sheep to Israel. However, moving not just sheep but any animal to another country is not very easy. But her sheep need a passport? A passport, huh? There were complications involved with it, especially having to prove that they were a legit breed. Now, Jenna, why did your sheep need a passport? I understand why we need a passport, but why them?
I guess for international travel, not just humans need passports, but sheep as well. And our sheep came to Israel, as new immigrants. They made Ba'aliyah, of course, so they need passports. And
does it prove their identity?
It proves they are Jewish sheep, the national animal of the Jewish people. So the ear tags from Canada identified them as being Canadian. And in Canada, we kept complete records of every sheep. This is like a passport booklet for every sheep, with every vaccine, who their parents were, their genealogy, like everything was in the book, even routine stuff like hoof trimming and annual vaccines. Everything was written in this book. Any health ailments they ever had was written up there, any vet visits, anything. And it was from our side to make it, we wanted it to do our part to make the transition for the sheep easy, like the actual immigration. We didn't want the Israeli Agricultural Ministry to say just trying to bring 120 sheep or nobody sheep, and there's not even a traceability on them or where they came from or what health statuses, etc. So we tried to keep our side by keeping meticulous records and traceability on the ear tag, so we could say where each sheep came from. And we also did our part by when we later on purchased, like from the butcher and from other people, the sheep that were going to be slaughtered or basically sold off on auction. We did due diligence to check also their traceability and that they're really a pedigree Jacob sheep. So we had the best flock probably in Canada, and the largest one for sure, of purebred Jacob sheep. And from our perspective, every sheep met a breed standard that we developed from having the sheep over a year and a half and studying the American Jacob Sheep Breeders Association standards and the British and all of that. But we actually never had a genetic test done of the sheep. But what happened is when the sheep made Aliyah, there's a lot of things that go into it, not just the plane ride, but when they arrive in Israel, they go to customs. And we had a problem to remove them from customs because there wasn't really a code for Jacob sheep for duties. And we had to pay VAT on their arrival and a lot of technical bureaucratic stuff. And we had 11 shipments of 11 sheep, in every second day into the airport. So it was a lot of balagan, as we call it in Israel. It means chaos. And the custom authority wasn't happy because after a certain amount of hours of arguing about the sheep, if they're really Jacob sheep or not, they had to release the sheep eventually because they can't keep them forever in customs in a box. They need to be watered, fed. And so after all 11 shipments were through, the customs authority decided it's time to pursue me, because my name was on the import documents, and to say that I lied, that these aren't Jacob sheep, basically. And the way to resolve it, we asked the process how to resolve it, is that the Agricultural Ministry was commissioned with 4 experts in the country, and they were going to study the genetics and like the origin of the sheep and to see if it's really Jacob sheep. And this process had no logic to it because it can take 1 week, it can take several years. There wasn't a time on it, and it needed to take as long as they feel like that they've gained enough evidence or the genetic proof that these are Jacob sheep. But luckily the process took only 4 or 5 months. And then in the end, after they came to visit the sheep and study them and did everything and all their due diligence to Canada and everything they did, the 4 experts all voted on the Agricultural Sheep Expert Committee that these are pedigree Jacob sheep and that they do belong to the Levant, which is Israeli it's Levant is the area from Israel up to Lebanon, the Levant. It's like a region. They have like a genetic gene that traces back to the region. And so we received an actual letter in Hebrew that we had to hand in at customs, where they said that these are Jacob's sheep. So my name was cleared at customs. But it also caused me a lot of problems because customs wanted $10,000 from my bank accounts, and I didn't have use of my bank accounts until it was proven that these are Jacob's sheep. So the process to me was extremely stressful, and that was how I spent my first 4 or 5 months as a new immigrant in Israel, just making Aliyah and becoming Israeli, is to navigate also the sheep bureaucracy, which was very intense. And it felt to me personally like a spiritual warfare that was on me because of the size of the miracle of the sheep returning to Israel. Then there was like the size of the obstacles to overcome in those first few months and weeks when we arrived in Israel. It was every day like a battle, if you know what I mean, to adjust to a new country. The sheep missed their hay in Canada. They had to eat new types of hay that grows in Israel. They had to change their diet, their grain. It wasn't the great old Canadian grain that they know. It was something different that they made and mixed with stuff, different mixture. The sheep, it was very hard for the sheep also to adjust to a new environment. You know, I guess just like humans, animals also have to adjust. And they had a very difficult quarantine in Israel. There was flooding in the government quarantine. It was built on the Gaza border, which rockets could threaten us, and today we know a lot of other threats. And there was some wild boar out there wandering, and wildlife that our Pyrenees had to defend our sheep from out there in the wilderness where they placed us. When the quarantine was supposed to end, they didn't give me the necessary paperwork to leave the quarantine. They told me verbally by mouth, you can leave the quarantine. So I thought that's all it takes. So I ordered a truck, but halfway to Jerusalem, I got a call from the agricultural ministry from all the way from the top, from the minister's office, that basically I ran away from the quarantine with the sheep and broke the quarantine, and basically that I'll be going to jail. And I laughed at this point into the telephone because out there the conditions was very uncomfortable. I had to stay in a place that wasn't livable. There was no, it's just a little room with a field around. The quarantine is not livable. For 6 weeks with the sheep to pass the quarantine, to release them. And at this point, I was happy to go to jail. I even said on the phone, please come and take me now. I want to study to become a doctor. And it'd be more peaceful to sit in the cell than to be this horrible new life as an immigrant out, in the in the nothingness with no shower, no hot shower, nothing, guarding sheep, So it was quite a welcome to Israel. And the next day, the sheep expert came and he gave me a piece of paper to leave. And I guess because I was so excited to go to jail, they decided not to take me there. And so they didn't want to probably take care of the sheep themselves, because it is quite a responsibility, let me tell you, with a lot of adversity sometimes that you have to overcome. Also a lot of joy, good times, but it can be everything. So I guess that was it. And then we moved to our first place in Nesarim, which means in Hebrew, Miracle Mountain. And so it was that was an exciting day. In the middle of Hanukkah, the quarantine ended. I almost went to jail during Hanukkah, but I didn't, luckily. And then we showed up at Miracle Mountain.
And what year did you arrive in Israel?
The sheep started to arrive in November 2016, and it was actually biblically the day that Noah opened the ark was when the sheep landed in Israel, the same biblical date in Hebrew. So as Noah opened the ark and the animals got off, Jacob's sheep arrived in Israel, and then the whole month of Kislev, which is the month of miracle, all the other shipments came in, and the quarantine ended officially on the first night of Hanukkah. The truck stopped at a moshav called Patish, because we'd become very famous in the south with the conditions we were living in. We had to shower at different rabbis' homes, and people in the communities, those border communities to Gaza, They cooked us food and delivered every night, Shabbat meals, everything, because they saw we couldn't leave our sheep in that situation because there was thieves and a lot of things in the area and wildlife that was threatening the sheep. And so they invited us to stop with the sheep in Moshav Patish on the way to Jerusalem. So the truck pulled into the Moshav. We lit a Hanukkah first candle on a Hanukkah in front of the truck. And we said goodbye to everybody in the south, which had become a lot of friends, Israelis that saw that we were warriors and trying to fight not just the government to get the sheep out of the quarantine where they were about to die from all the knee-deep mud, but also how we had to stand our ground against a lot of threats like wildlife, thieves, like armed thieves, not just thieves that come to petty thieves. These are dangerous criminals that are armed that want the sheep as well for shawarma. Yeah, so we fought a lot of things. But one of the most amazing things was on the first night that the sheep arrived at the quarantine, I was left there alone in the dark, and there was no electricity, of course, so my phone battery started to run down. And suddenly out of the sky came a ball of light, and it landed sort of near Kala, like our main matriarch. She was on the first flight, the one I spoke in another recording from before, the one that went to the mayor's house. She's always the adventurous sheep. And I stood frozen, the sheep stood frozen, and that was the end of this funny experience. And I said, it will always just be between me and the sheep what we saw, so I couldn't explain what it was. It was literally like a little ball of light that came down and it exactly landed by the sheep. Then the sheep didn't move. I didn't feel frightened. My phone was already dead. I couldn't make video or photo or anything. There was no electricity to even charge. But before the ball of light, I was very scared to stand out there because I couldn't even call if I was under attack or anything. It wasn't possible. And maybe 3 hours later, when Gil arrived with the vehicle, because he had to go and buy food and stuff, he saw that I looked a little bit frightened. And so I told him about what I'd seen and stuff. And so he wrote it, and it's also on the blog that I'm writing the story of the Jacob sheep. So it was quite an experience I'll never forget.
Listen, real briefly before we go, what is the future? What are you seeing for the future of the sheep? What are you seeing for yourself? I know that you're not in Israel right now. I know you want to get back, but just in about 1 minute's time, just summarize all that.
Well, at the moment, I'm praying about the future. Things have changed a lot with war in Israel, sadly, and the terrible situation with our hostages that need to come home. And maybe the whole world is a little bit in upheaval at the moment. But one thing is for sure, God is the same today, tomorrow, every day. And so I rely on God to show me the way and to guide me. And I'm praying at the moment for direction. What is the next step? And when God wants me to return to Israel, which is my home as an Israeli. And the sheep are thriving where they are at the moment in Samaria. And so I'm really grateful to that, because actually the shepherd all these 2,000 years was God of the sheep. I was maybe just a tool to bring them to Israel, but I'm not the official shepherd. They have the shepherd from ancient times that takes care of that. They can survive 2,000 years apart from the Jewish people and be the only living animal of our Torah that we can see with our eyes today, standing in Israel to validate that the Bible is true and is a living story, an animal that's mentioned in a story in the Bible to exist today in Israel that people can visit. And
unfortunately, we're out of time. So what is the future for the Jacob sheep? Is it a permanent path that Jenna is to stay on? Is she just being used to help bring them to a place that is for someone else? I guess only time will tell. In the meantime, you may read the rest of her story on her website at migdaleder.com. Also, be sure and visit our website, branchofisrael.com, to listen to our other broadcast. And if you want to learn how to say the Hebraic prayers, then purchase my book, Hebraic Prayers from the Vine, and learn along with a native Israeli, and learn how to say them like a real pro. You may get this and more at our website, so feel free to visit us today. Until then, thank you so much for listening. Lihitrot, goodbye, or see you again.